Hi, everybody. I'm Keith from 2A Cops, Cops Supporting Gun Rights. In this episode, we're going to talk about a case decision that was decided in federal court that opens up a whole bunch of gun rights for a big slew of people in the United States. Now, with that said, do me a favor, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. It lets the algorithm know that we're important, that other people should see what we have to see. And yeah, we'll get more into it here in a second. Stay tuned. All right, before we get started, I just want to thank all of you people that comment ACAB and FTP in the comments. Most of the comments are really good. About 75% of the comments are really good, but about 25% are people just leaving ACAB and FTP comments. Now, if you don't know what that is, head on over to Google and type in ACAB or FTP and just look up for the meaning, and you'll see what it is, and you'll see why I can't say it on YouTube. But I want to thank you guys. I appreciate every one of you that comments ACAB and FTP because we're monetized. So every time you comment and every time you leave that comment, it lets the algorithm know that we're important and people look at us. And the other thing is that since we get paid, I like to think that every time you say ACAB and FTP, you give me a little bit of money. And the best part is Matt and I, the other co-creator on 2A Cops, we give 10% of everything that we earn back to cops in need. So cops that got shot and their departments are really screwing them over and not taking care of them, or cops that have cancer and need help just with day-to-day bills, we put our money towards that. And I'd like to think that every time you say ACAB and FTP, you're helping a cop in need. I appreciate you. All right, let's get down to it. So this has to do with marijuana users and gun rights. For the longest time, the ATF on the 4473, which is the form that you fill out to purchase a gun, there's one of the questions where it's like, the question is like, are you the actual purchaser of the firearm and all that? And down there it says, are you an unlawful user of marijuana? Now, some people actually marked yes. And when they marked yes, they weren't able to get the gun. I think it was a broad, where that comes from is there's an actual law that basically says unlawful users or addicts of controlled substances can't possess a firearm. Now, I think it was a pretty broad overreach for the government to come out and say that because you smoked marijuana occasionally or because you smoked marijuana that you can't have a firearm. I mean, that's like saying because you drink. I mean, there's no question on there saying you can't drink, or you drink too much, so therefore you can't have a firearm. There's no questions like that, or for any other drug under the sun. And so somebody finally took them on, and government lost. Shocker. And we'll talk about that. But let's talk about the specifics of the case. I like looking at what happened to, like, how did this guy get in trouble to begin with, and how did we go down this road? So the defendant is Jared Michael Harrison. He was pulled over by police for failing to stop at a red light. The officer smelled marijuana and questioned Harrison about the source of the smell. Now, Harrison told the officer he was on his way to work at a medical marijuana dispensary, but he did not have a state-issued medical marijuana card to show that he lawfully possessed any marijuana that might be in the car. Now, the officer searched the car. The officer absolutely has a right to search the car. As an example, if they smell alcohol in the vehicle, and I don't think it would be this way in Texas because I think you can have an open container in Texas, but other states where you can't have an open container, the officer can search the car to look for alcohol that might be in there. Same thing with weed. If you can't prove that you lawfully possess the marijuana, then the officer can search the vehicle and look inside. So that's what the officer did. And inside, the officer found a loaded revolver, prescription bottles, marijuana, THC gummies, THC vape cartridges, pre-rolled marijuana cigarettes, and Harrison was ultimately arrested and charged with possession of marijuana paraphernalia, and failure to obey a traffic signal. Now, those are state charges, okay? Now, somewhere along the line, a federal grand jury picked it up, and the feds decided to charge a federal case. Now, that's totally separate from what the officer did out in the field. He didn't charge any gun crimes. He just charged these miscellaneous drug crimes. So the feds pick it up, and it goes to a grand jury in 2022, and they give an indictment to Harrison for possessing a firearm while being an unlawful user of marijuana, which is a violation of 18 U.S.C. 922 G3, if you want to go look it up. And so somebody finally took him on, and government lost. Shocker. And we'll talk about that. But let's talk about the specifics of the case. I like looking at what happened to, like, how did this guy get in trouble to begin with, and how did we go down this road? So the defendant is Jared Michael Harrison. He was pulled over by police for failing to stop at a red light. The officer smelled marijuana and questioned Harrison about the source of the smell. Now, Harrison told the officer he was on his way to work at a medical marijuana dispensary, but he did not have a state-issued medical marijuana card to show that he lawfully possessed any marijuana that might be in the car. Now, the officer searched the car. The officer absolutely has a right to search the car. As an example, if they smell alcohol in the vehicle, and I don't think it would be this way in Texas because I think you can have an open container in Texas, but other states where you can't have an open container, the officer can search the car to lo So Harrison filed a motion to dismiss the indictment, arguing that the statute is unconstitutionally vague. I agree. It was. It's in violation of his due process. Again, spot on. And infringes upon his fundamental right to possess a firearm in violation of the Second Amendment. Again, correct. So the motion to dismiss was granted by the court. And it's interesting what the judge has to say and what the government had to say to try to uphold this. Now, a federal judge in Oklahoma ruled that a law prohibiting marijuana users from owning firearms is unconstitutional. And it goes back to that unlawful users or addicts of controlled substances charge. The prosecutors said that the law is, and hear what they're trying to say now, they said it was consistent with longstanding historical tradition in America of disarming presumptively risky persons, namely felons, the mentally ill, and the intoxicated. Now, look, what they're trying to do is they're trying to hold in line with Bruin. Now, Bruin's New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin that was heard in the United States Supreme Court last year, where it opened up gun rights for all of us. It is a great decision that protects all sorts of us. And I knew that all these gun laws were just going to start falling because of it. The government's trying to say that preventing felons and these other people is a long-standing tradition. Well, man, the Second Amendment's been around since 1776. So to come out and say that it's a long-standing tradition, I mean, those laws were enacted like 50, 75 years ago. That is not even half of the length of the time the Second Amendment's been around. So that's not long-standing. Long-standing would be something in the early 1800s at this point. But now, U.S. District Judge Patrick Wyrick of Oklahoma City said specifically the law stripping him of his fundamental right to possess a firearm is not a constitutionally permissible means of disarming Harrison. He continues on, but the mere use of marijuana carries none of the characteristics that this nation's history and tradition of firearms regulation support. So the judge shows, hey, look, man, this is not a long-standing tradition. This is something that came out recently, and recently meaning like last 50, 75 years, and that's not a long-standing tradition. So it's gone. Now, normally when decisions are made in a district court, it's only within that district. But other districts, they also they have to look at what that judge did and take it into account. And of course, they have to take into account Bruin. You're going to see a lot more of these cases fall. I think you'll lose felons in possession of a firearm. I think you're going to lose a lot of these other ones that come up. Personally, I think, and I can't wait to pull this up when it finally happens, I think the NFA has the potential of going away, which would be awesome. If the NFA goes away, I can't wait to pull this tape up and say, I told you so, and show what happened. Now, the interesting thing here, the 4473. The 4473 specifically, which is, again, the form that you fill out to buy firearms, specifically says, are you an unlawful user of marijuana? Now, it's interesting. I always looked at it when I'm buying a gun, I look at it and it's like, are you an unlawful user? Well, if it's lawful in my state, no, but it's unlawful federally. So would you mark no? Would you mark yes? It's so vague, right? So I think, now looking at this, the ATF is going to have to remove that from their form because it doesn't apply in the Oklahoma, Texas area or that district. But they're not going to because the ATF is just hell-bent on doing whatever they feel like they want to do. So it'll be interesting to see what happens out of this. It does open up gun rights for a whole slew of people. Basically, all you people that had a marijuana card or were smoking marijuana, it opens up for you. Now, whether you like marijuana or not, it doesn't matter. The government was overreaching on this whole gun issue. Now, our advice to you. When you look back at the reason for the stop, one of the things that we talk about is all these cases happen because people bring attention to themselves. And one of the things we talked about, people are like, we just had that video on the arm brace and what you should do with the arm brace. And a lot of people are like, what if this happens or that happens? Look, man, you can go your whole life without being contacted by the police, except for, say, because you were speeding or something. But when you look at this case, he's on probation for violence. He's got an ankle monitor. So he's already in violation of his probation when he's out smoking weed, having all this stuff in the car. Now, whether you agree with it or not, I'm talking about the facts of the case. And I know I'm going to get a whole bunch of comments about the road pirates are out there. Okay. Look, man, the guy's high on weed, driving recklessly. got an ankle monitor, and he's on probation. Look, you're bringing attention to yourself. A lot of these things, if you just didn't bring attention to yourself, there probably wouldn't be any problems. So our advice to you, all right? So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a comment, even if it's FTP and ACAB. Hey man, thanks. I appreciate you telling the algorithm that we're important. And just know that every time you hit FTP and ACAB, YouTube gives us a little bit of money, and we pass that back on to the law enforcement community to help cops in need. So thanks again. You guys have a great day. God bless you, and take care.